Tan Desi to move the motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sir Edward, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. And I beg to move that this House has considered support for children with SEND. I'm grateful to have secured this very important debate and welcome the opportunity to lead on it to discuss support for children with special educational needs and disabilities. I am pleased we're addressing this important issue today, and I would like to use my contribution to amplify the voices of children with SEND and their families. I know members here to speak in this debate from across the House will have heard from constituents about the difficulties they have faced with accessing services, support systems and schooling. Approached by parents not sure where else to turn as they navigate a global pandemic with a child with a disability, I hope we can all use today as a collective opportunity to raise concerns of these young people and their families to push for change and further support. Ultimately, every child deserves to have access to the support they're entitled to, and currently this is not the case. Forgotten, left behind, overlooked. These were the words used to describe the experiences of children with SEND and their families throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, according to the recent All-Party Parliamentary Group for SEND report, which collated responses from parents and young people on this issue. Prior to the pandemic, resources for local authorities and supporting services were already stretched by a decade of needless Tory austerity, and the upheaval of the past year has only exacerbated this problem. One of the most pressing issues I have come across is the continued delays to treatment, diagnosis and plans for support. In my own constituency of Slough, I have been approached by constituents waiting up to 2 years for a diagnosis for their child, and that is simply unacceptable. If children are unable to get a diagnosis, then they are unable to get early intervention, which we know improves their outcomes later in life. Yet this window is being missed for so many young people simply due to lack of funding and resources. As the chair of the NHS East Berkshire Clinical Commissioning Group, Dr. Jim O'Donnell, highlighted to me, identifying those with SEND is important, just as important as ensuring they get the support they need. In Slough, only 0.34% of our registered population is coded as having a learning disability, less than 1/7 of the estimated national prevalence. The national target achievement for health checks in learning disabilities is 67%. In Slough, we are currently only at 61.5% of those coded. But since we are not yet successfully coding most of those estimated to have learning disabilities, they are in fact only delivering health checks to 0.21% of the population. And this, by the way, is far better than many of our neighbours. This just goes to show how far we need to improve as a country in order to be in a position to ensure that people with learning disabilities receive the recognition, support, health and care services that they need and deserve. Delays in this sector also aggravate the existing difficulties faced. In some cases, this can lead to mental health difficulties for both the child and the parent awaiting confirmation of their child's diagnosis and therefore support. At this point, such delays can mean the additional issues caused are not taken into account in their educational healthcare plan. It's a vicious cycle where everyone loses. And to address the backlog and delays in the initial stages of setting up support for children and parents, urgent funding and attention is needed. Sir Edward, delays have been seen across sectors, but for children with SEND, these could have lifelong consequences. Even those who have been able to secure support and EHCPs have felt that the process has only worsened under the pandemic. This process must have compassion and have the child's needs at its heart. Yet constituents who have contacted me often feel frustrated fighting to get their views considered as the child's primary carer, and even having to push to get specific support written into these plans. One local family even noted their support was not quantified or specified, leaving them disappointed in the level of support, as one treatment would have fulfilled their support requirements. And this is a pattern. In fact, 2 in 3 parents reported that their child was not receiving the support set out by law in their plan. If parents have to fight at every single stage just to get the very basic level of support for them and their child, then I'm afraid the system is broken. And coronavirus has only further diminished this already inadequate support. Like with other vital local services, many have been stopped or reduced since March 2020. Ambitious About Autism reported that 80% of autistic young people and their parents who responded to their survey said that support that they had been accessing before the pandemic either stopped or was reduced. One Voice found 58% of their respondents to their survey had no care support at all between March and July. And all of this is in the context of a system already in crisis. With the recent Women and Equality Select Committee report, Sir Edward, acknowledging that according to the evidence that they received, the pandemic had, and I quote, brought into focus and exacerbated widely acknowledging pre-existing systemic issues in the wider SEND system, which far from operating as the 2014 Children and Families Act reforms had intended. So while school closures undoubtedly have impacted every child in this country, sadly it seems for disabled children this has been disproportionate. Despite many settings remaining open throughout successive lockdowns, 83% did not have access to school between March and July. As we know, attending school is so much more than just an education. For children with SEND in particular, it is an opportunity to receive treatment, to be able to access specialised equipment, and can be hugely beneficial for their all-round development. Yet parents were left with difficult decisions about the best outcome for their child. Parents, local authorities, support services and schools have had to tread a very careful balance of protecting their child's health and the health of children with SEND from the threat of coronavirus and the impact of continued isolation. And even when children have been able to return to schooling, due to the lack of treatment during successive lockdowns, many have fallen behind on their speech, communication and motor skills. Unable to access formal therapies, assistive technologies, respite care or regular treatment, many parents have noted a decline in disabled children's physical and mental well-being. As the Disabled Children's Partnership note, if young people are in pain, they will not be ready to learn. Devastatingly, it's not just formal support that has seen a decline. Social isolation of disabled children and their families has also had an impact, with reports indicating that they are more socially isolated than most. This removal of routine, socialisation and normality has left 90% of parents with some level of anxiety as a result. The clear disproportionate impact of COVID-19 on these families surely deserves a dedicated plan to support them. Without a complete plan from government on how to address the backlog, as we emerge from the latest lockdown, already stretched services will struggle for resources. Through no fault of their own, disabled children and their families have been left behind. So they need the SEND report to address these deep problems in the system, to be a future of all future pandemic planning, and specific funding to address the huge delays and backlogs. I know local authorities and charities across the country have been doing what they can to support those who need it most. In Slough, our council has been working hard to ensure better outcomes for children with SEND. In fact, just today sees the launch of the South East's all-age autism strategy, setting out the region's ambition to ensure that autistic people and their families get the best care and support and reduce the health inequalities that autistic people face. Having served as a member of the MENCAP Society, I am very much aware about the incredible work of the voluntary sector. Work from charities and organisations such as the Disabled Children's Partnership, including MENCAP, WellChild, Together for Short Lives, the Children's Trust, Scope, Sense, National Autistic Society, Family Fund, Council for Disabled Children, ambitious about autism, contact and action for children. IPSIA, that's the independent provider of special educational advice, and many more, has also been invaluable. But funding and support for SEND has long needed attention by this government, and sadly it has taken a pandemic to reveal the true extent of the problems within the system. So can the Minister confirm that these deep-rooted problems will be addressed and guarantee that they will not downgrade their legal duty to children with SEND as a result of the widespread failure to currently fulfil them? As one parent noted in the APPG report, for children with SEND, their worlds were already very confusing before coronavirus and are even more so now. Sir Edward, we must do all we can to support them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr.